Okay, I'm starting. Afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you for joining us for Dialogue 7 of our WGH India series on engagement of frontline health workers in COVID response in India. The frontline health workers emerged as a very critical component of our COVID response strategy in India, and recognizing their crucial role, Women in Global Health India chapter sought to amplify their contributions and highlight their concerns and challenges by bringing them together on a platform with different relevant stakeholders and share their concerns. We started listening to the ASHA workers first, and given the overwhelming response, we got really motivated to extend the series, and then we moved on to bringing in the auxiliary nurse midwives and hear their perspectives. And here we are, so excited to bring to you the third part of our dialogue series, which is on women collectives and self-help groups. This particular part of the series is being organized in collaboration with Roshni, the Center of Women Collectives-led social action, a technical support unit to Ministry of Rural Development, housed at Lady Irwin College, and technically and financially supported by UNICEF India. On 18th August, which was the first part of the series, we heard directly from members of these collectives on their contributions and challenges that they are facing while working with other frontline health workers in COVID response on the ground. Taking the conversation forward, we have an exciting panel today with speakers from civil society, development partners, state, as well as National Rural Livelihood Mission, where we'll be reflecting together on the potential ways of moving forward from here. Before we begin, I would like to quickly summarize the key points discussed in the last session and the recommendations offered by different speakers. So the discussions highlighted the renewed role of women collectives in COVID response and their contributions and continuous engagement with the frontline workers for ensuring access to food, nutrition, entitlements, healthcare services, awareness generation, surveillance activities, etc., just to name a few. These speakers shared their personal experiences of being resisted and stigmatized by their family as well as community members, being accused of corruption in running community kitchens, and the kind of limited support they received from the panchayat members. They shared how mobility restrictions and the lockdown imposed closure had created difficulties in conducting surveillance activities, prevented them to assist the community members in accessing essential healthcare services and nutrition services. But despite these challenges, they shared how they have been trying their best to the best of their capacities to help the pregnant women, the malnourished children to reach the hospitals for essential checkups and services. Procuring ration and essential food items and providing them to the pregnant women, disabled, elderly, and other vulnerable population groups. They even ran community or Janta hotels to provide low-cost meal to the communities. Lockdown also has shifted all the communication, training, capacity building exercises to digital mode, and this has not only been raised in this particular dialogue, but consistently throughout our dialogue series, where poor network connectivity issues, continuous power cuts, difficult terrains, inability to recharge their phones, these were some of the commonly cited barriers raised by these speakers. Hence digital divide is one of the very serious concern to be taken forward. Also, there were a few gendered concerns that emerged in the sense, for example, one of these speakers shared with respect to the distribution of resources, like buying sanitary pads as an essential item was seen as an added expense to the household as compared to men spending money on alcohol. Moving on to recommendation, the recommendations were largely around providing them their due recognition and remuneration, as their work has largely been done on a voluntary basis, providing them the necessary infrastructure support to carry out their assigned responsibilities, like providing them office spaces, ensuring sufficient supply of iron and calcium supplements, providing them safety gear and protective equipments, etc. Two very critical recommendations came from the discussion were one on the need for strengthening the livelihood generation activities for the community members, as the pandemic has led to economic crisis kind of like situation in many households, with the burden of repayment of loans without sustainable sources of income. Second was on the convergence within line departments from the health and ICDS for better coordination and avoiding any duplication of tasks so that they can be more effectively engaged. So these were a few quick reflections from last session. Before I hand it over to Dr. Anand, who will be moderating the session, I would just like to highlight some of the housekeeping rules. First is to request to please keep your video and audio off for easy moderation. Please, in case you have used your device's name while entering, please change it to your original name. It will be helpful for us to document. You can navigate your screen using speakers section on the top right corner to choose between the presentation and the speaker view. The session is being live broadcasted on WGH India Facebook page and is also recorded for documentation purposes. Please write your questions in the chat box with your name and organization for us to help contextualize your questions, and we'll take them towards the end. And lastly, please share your thoughts or comments in the feedback form, which we'll be circulating towards the end of the session. And do write to us on the email IDs provided on the screen for any queries. So with this short note, I welcome you all once again for joining. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to the Women in Global Health India team and Roshni team for putting the series together. And now I invite Dr. Sarita Anand from Roshni, who will be moderating the session, to take this forward. Dr. Anand.
Thank you, Deepika. A very warm welcome to all the people here, our panelists and our participants. Thank you, WGHI team, for collaborating with us to organize this an important dialogue in the journey of our Roshni Center. Just to give you a little background, that Roshni Center is based in the Department of Development, Communication and Extension of Lady Irwin College. And we have here with us our director of the Lady Irwin College, Dr. Anupa Sidhu, who is also the chairperson of the Roshni Center. I invite Dr. Sidhu to give her opening remarks before we go any further. Dr. Sidhu, please.
So my warm welcome to all the delegates and all the participants, and this very special multi-stakeholder dialogue. The Roshni Center is committed to work with NRLM and the SRLM to work on in the grassroots, especially in 3 states. And during COVID time, one of the states, they collected data through Google Drive, through Google Forms, and tried to understand that during COVID times, how everybody is affected, how the activities of the rural communities are affected. And there were these, most of the things looked like reasonably positive, except that IFA tablet and calcium supply is irregular. And in one district, in another district of that state, generally most of the things had an impediment up to 50%. So there were no cluster meetings. So it was a kind of a window, and we are looking for the options of, how to do hand-holding with all the NRLM programs that we have committed. This was only a tester. And so it was realized that instead of just a quantitative data, we look at the qualitative picture. And I do thank WGHI to partner and bring the community voices and dialogue. And as just told by Deepika, that that was extremely beautiful, gave great insights. And We could have also perhaps done an FGD at various levels for the community voices as to what they require in 3 different states or different states. The one that we had previously was on Orissa. So this for us is a very determining activity, and I thank all the stakeholders for participating in this and kind of in their Dialogue 7, bring perspectives of policy influencers and how to take it forward for effective engagement of community collectives, of women collectives and self-help groups. And these collectives are all meant for social change. And by and large in the Swabhiman series, and that is the larger program, and the host being NRLM in partnership with Roshni and UNICEF. So we'll do our very best, but we want to keep our ears on the soil. By and large, the Roshni team is surrounded by students. The platform is there in the academic institution, so that makes it very vibrant. Many more students who are trained into behavior change communication and participatory research. So a lot of those students also get to, understand these nuances. They are probably not, attending this, but generally in day-to-day, this training is needed for the next generation as to how to reach out to communities remotely. The ICT is a very strong tool. But when we want to really keep the ears on the soil, ICT somewhere, is not able to capture until unless the respondents are very savvy, which we saw in the last meeting. They were very savvy. They brought about a very honest and with their honest and dedicated effort, they tried to say what were the problems, what were the constraints, how they continue to have perseverance and, and what they exactly needed also. So some kind of local entrepreneurship, some business plans. So I would like to, generally pitch our conversation today to the larger mission in the country of self-reliance. COVID has shaken up all old systems. We had built up very robust health and food security systems, and we were working on it, and I think it was promising. But the fact that it has been shaken up by a threat that now we want to sharpen our tools further. We don't want to get into response set or an answer, we can't do this, food demonstrations not possible, cluster meetings not possible, finance flow not possible, loan payback not possible, although all of that is truth. But we need to know that how and we will do hand-holding when we find that these are newer initiatives, and even in disaster, when everything is moving in the background, the milieu is moving very rapidly and in an unpredictable mode. We are still standing steadfast with our own women collectives that they discharge. And I strongly believe in gender layering, that every member of the family, they should be brought under fold and form some stronger teams at home level, thereafter at community level. And then, with our experience working in the rural community and Panchayati Raj PRI institutions, and now NRLMs, the cluster federations, we have a history of knowing that ultimately when it comes that when the person who's beading all these situations together is a community level woman worker, there is success. So we cannot lose hand of Women Collective and say this is what is possible in COVID time and more than this is not possible. We should not succumb to that. We have to encourage every member of the community to become self-reliant. If even in a single transport like ambulance, you have to call an ambulance, it will take you 25 kilometers. So I think the local community should know that I need a ration card for myself. I need a license card for myself. Every adult member, 18 plus, men and women put together, should have a license. And whether it's a community lady worker or a male child at home who wants to run a taxi on a business model, they are self-sufficient. So I think these are certain models. They will have to think afresh and start the self-reliant India and a digital India, and that holds the promise of giving much more empowerment to community than just, kind of speech and documents. We are ready, and we are ready to hold hand, and we know that we have many like-minded partners with whom we will work, and it will bring a larger picture together. So we are committed academically. We teach development, communication, and extension. So for us, this is, live classroom. Uh, so we are always at it. Money, no money, linkage, no linkage. So we are always at it. But then we know what works. Many times when other things fail. So I really wish all the members, right from grassroots, various Poshan Didi and Kishori Sakhi, etc., from there right up till NRLM head office and state RLM, UNICEF state offices, Roshni, many more NGOs who are working and have similar experiences, and they share it. So this is a great forum of multi-stakeholders with the university system, that we develop a workforce in an academic institution, a workforce at the micro level with gender layering at the family level, that they have dialogues, they are cohesive, and they make important collectives with the women collectives. So we should work, and I look at it very integrated. Nutrition is not just about eating food. It is a whole gamut of financial security, livelihood security, health, available water, absorption, the whole gamut of things, and only that brings about good nutrition. And popping certain tablets are very important, because when the diet cannot provide it, we need to pop that also. So a medicinal, the health intervention is also important. So it's a multi-stakeholder meet today on a multidisciplinary issue as serious as nutrition, and all international parameters. They look at women health and women indicators of health as P critical to define whether the country is developing, developed, and the Millennium Development Goals and the SDGs and all goals in future will be determined by such efforts. So we need to enrich ourselves, and this is the plus point is it is a very challenging time. We have to think de novo, and the bad part is till now, whatever we had thought, it is showing a detour, and we need corrective measures. I depend on today's discussion on policy influences to take the matter forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sidhu, for those comments and reflections on our dialogue, which happened on the 18th of August. And as Dr. Sidhu just very rightly pointed out, that today we have this platform of multi-stakeholders, wherein we have people from the ground. Our speakers represent that community perspective, and going up to how the implementation partners have had the challenges of responding to the COVID situation, and what role can development partners and the development agencies can play. That will come through our development partner speaker, and then the national policy influencer. So we have a diverse panel. We will be able to reflect on from community to the national perspective today. And with that, the background which we heard from Deepika about our dialogue. So a very quick 1-minute thing on those people who are joining us only for today and who were not there in the last dialogue. That in the last dialogue, we had community women representatives of the self-help group members, and they were able to bring forth the kind of challenges they faced in responding to the COVID-19 expectations of them. And because it came all of a sudden, and but they did not wait for any kind of a guideline so far to go. I mean, of course, for social distancing and others, because they could not go on with their normal routine, but how they took up those roles, and how effective were they, or what were the challenges faced, they were raised by them. And today we will take up all those issues with our speakers who are there with us. So we move to our speakers, and we, as I said, we have an eminent panel. So to begin with, I start with our first speaker for today, that is Ma'am Neeta Kejriwal. Ma'am Neeta Kejriwal is with National Rural Livelihood Mission. She has been there with National Rural Livelihood Mission since 2011, since its inception. But ma'am has a lot of work backing her in the social sector. And she has been working for Ministry of, Water. She worked on health programs for tuberculosis and for leprosy elimination. So, with that common background of social sector, I think ma'am brings a lot of wisdom and wealth in terms of policy as well as implementing programs and the administration of these programs. She was also responsible to work for Drugs and Cosmetics Act and also for Prevention of Food and Adulteration Act. So from ma'am, we expect, that highest level of, whatever the challenges of the system could be in responding, or how quickly the systems, when they start responding, but by the time it reaches the ground, what kind of time or challenges it may face. So we look forward to hearing you, ma'am. After Dr. Ma'am Neeta Kejriwal, represents the Development Partners Fraternity. She has been working with UNICEF India on advancing women's nutrition through Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, as well as National Rural Livelihood Mission. She has worked for over 18 years and has been working from grassroots up to the national level in varied capacities. For advancing access to nutrition services for women in marginalized tribal, urban, and rural communities, while working with USAID and Ministry of Women and Child Development. So what we find is a common thread in her work which is, she's been partnering with women collectives as equal stakeholders in decision-making and implementing the programs, and which brings, a very important component of our democratic decentralization to focus. She has several publications to her credit, and she's written for various journals and book chapters. So we look forward to hearing you, Dr. Vani. With that, I go on to our third panelist for today, and she brings in the state perspective and specifically the implementation perspective. We have Dr. Babita Mahapatra with us. She is the Additional Chief Executive Officer in the Odisha Livelihood Mission under the Panchayati Raj and Drinking Water Department of the government of Odisha, and she leads the food, nutrition, and gender agenda in the state mission right now. So Dr. Babita has about 20 years of experience in the rural development sector and has also rich experience in programs planning and their management, specifically in rural development, livelihoods, and gender and nutrition. Further, she has experience in, project implementation, which is a very important component of how the program reaches, even when it is beautifully planned, while implementing, what are those challenges or what are the lessons. We will get to hear that from Dr. Babita. And she also has, to her credit, a vital research background, which kind of informs the planning and implementation. So again, welcome, Dr. Babita. Our first speaker for the panel, but our panelists from the community perspective, we are looking forward to hearing Mr. Binju Abraham. He's a development practitioner who has worked with rural communities in Jharkhand for last 2 decades and has worked extensively with self-help group institutions, natural resource management, and on value chain development, specifically in tribal regions of the state. And he is currently anchoring governance pilots and leads Pradhan's operations in South Chota Nagpur region. He is also a Ford Fellow, holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Sambalpur, and has master's in development studies from Cornell University, USA. So we can understand that we have rich experience now with us, and the next 1 hour we should be really very keenly listening to what our speakers bring forth their insights. So my first set of questions will be around the larger landscape of women collectives and what are the emerging concerns of their work. So Mr. Abraham, my first question to you will be that how did you respond to what you were observing on the field right now, or, you know, in the beginning towards March and early April? What were you observing, and to whom were you able to reach out to, both for provisioning of services, and if you as a partner needed support, reaching out to government or other development partners? So we would like to hear your experiences on that. Over to you.
Thank you. It's so heartening to know about Roshni and Roshni's efforts. At a time when India is touching record fresh cases each day. On Wednesday, we crossed 70,000 mark, now totaling to close to 3 million. You all have to put our best in bringing stakeholders together. And it's so motivating to know that Roshni's effort to bring the SHG institutions, right from the nano SHGs to the block level federations, in fighting this big crisis that has come over our nation and globally, a pandemic as well. As Dr. Sidhu was telling, India is in somewhat better placed. I would say better placed because I don't know if our public health systems or food security systems are that great, but then we can certainly say that the social capital that India invested in the last 5-6 years through the NRLM program, we are prepared at the ground to face a crisis of this nature. COVID pandemic has severely affected all of us, and life is not going to be the same. Everybody is making doing sense making of the emerging situation, acting on ground, trying to find the prognosis of how things will unfold. Especially that India is yet to, or we have not crossed the peak, and we are going through that peak stage. Yeah, so I'm still on the learning curve, to be very honest. For Pradhan, I could work in a large part of central eastern India, and we could also do a couple of studies and all. So yeah, I'm looking forward in this seminar to jointly figure out what we can do. And I place my gratitude to the organizers at Roshni and the partners. And thank you for the previous session that also helped me to understand the perspective of different other states. Yeah, so I think what I would like to share, can somebody run the PPT? Neha, are you there? Yeah, thank you. So we could actually, as I said, we could work in the Central Eastern India belt in the 116 blocks, thanks to many of the donors who supported us. And the people whom we worked with were these SHG institutions. The social capacities that we developed over the time were our strength. And it was an effort that we did with the panchayat and the local administrations, and we were a part of the district control rooms and the various other Niti Ayogs, the Mother NGO and other such formations that were there. Can you go to the next slide? So let me give, the question is that how do I look at what were the observations? So there were some initial challenges which we actually overcame, and there are some long-term challenges. So, initial challenges was that, we didn't know, many of us also, we didn't know what is this virus, and there were a lot of rumors, and even the Anganwadi workers or the ANMs, they had the kind of training that they also got were very crude in the sense that China से कुछ फूल का मंजर आ रहा है, हम लोग के नाक में आएगा तो हम चीखेंगे, बीमार पड़ जाएंगे, तुरंत मर जाएंगे, या कुछ भूकंप आ रहा है. So all kind of, rumors as it, goes. So that was one big issue that was there in the initial challenge. The second was a large number of people. हमारे झारखंड में the thing is that we have monocrop rain-fed agriculture pattern, and December के बाद all of the people migrate. हर घर से कोई ना कोई migrate करते हैं. So they all go and come back in the month of June, July, when again the rainy season begins. They bring cash so that they can invest in the as a kharif input, and then they do the cultivation, and again they go back. And so few of the people who cannot migrate in a long distance, they actually locally कोई hotel में, ईटा भट्टा में या local कहीं labor का काम करते हैं. तो the lockdown actually imposed a lot of struggle for the community. So ये जो बीच का and the lean period starts begins from April onwards. Your food reserves finish, your cash reserve finish, and these employment opportunities are very important. So that is something that was very striking. Many of the people came to our offices to ask for a job and things like that. So it was a very bad situation in the month of April. We were also doing a few studies through APU, Sambodhi, and other such organizations, and trying to understand the level of cashlessness, how many families are living in hunger, how many families do not have ability to move more than a month. तो इस तरह हम लोगों ने कुछ studies भी किए थे, and our SHG institutions were closely engaged in identifying the vulnerable households. Roughly around 1,500 households were there. The other problem was that these families were also at their destination. Their relatives were struggling because वहाँ पर shelter नहीं है, food nahi hai, because there the construction sites or the factories where they were working, they stopped. That's the other crisis. There was also this like the rumor was also spreading, and जो normal बीमारियां हैं, आपका malaria है, other बुखार जैसा चीजें होते हैं, तो उसमें भी लोग डर रहे थे कि कैसे करके हम आगे जाएंगे. So there was this level of fear, panic among the villagers. जब लोग बाहर से भी आ रहे हैं, उनको कैसे करके डील करेंगे, उसको लेके भी काफी confusions थे. As I was saying, the healthcare facilities also, OPD facilities, institutional deliveries, आपके THR, midday meal program, ये सब भी stop हो गए थे, and these are very critical services, especially in the lean period. So these are some of the initial challenges that we experienced, and the long-term challenges are that the whole quarantine center management. I mean, lately, सरकार ने बोल दिया कि आप घर में ही कर लीजिए. So there was initially a lot of preparations. But then बाद में there was mixed responses, and I think the state didn't had enough funds to also run this संख्या में every block roughly around 3,500 migrants were coming, and to check them all, to put them all in quarantine centers, ये काफी difficult situation था. That's a challenge that is still there. What is happening is that currently there is a lot of comorbidity happening because of rainy season. Diarrhea, malaria, dengue, इस तरह के जो बीमारियां हैं ये काफी फैल रहे हैं. ये अभी ये सब का symptoms बुखार से काफी similar है, तो लोग उसको attend करना नहीं चाह रहे हैं. And the public system is largely now COVID को respond करने में engaged है, immunization affected है, THR नहीं जा रहे हैं. तो all this there is a certain level of challenges in that front. The NREGA allocation has improved. The state is really putting a great effort, but in spite of that, the kind of demand that is registered for work, we are not able to respond to that. There is an increased violence, as we heard in the last session also, especially on the women and girls. And because of this loss of a large number of communities are depending on nutrition that is coming from the entitlement programs, there is a challenge on the nutritional deficiency of the children and mothers. There is because of the long prolonged lockdown, timely seeds milna, खाद मिलना, even government का भी अपना procurement timely complete करना, and the confusion that for example we have Pradhan as a very large poultry whitebird program. We don't know how many कितना हम डालेंगे, because there is always this कंफ्यूजन कि कोविड टाइम्स में कि बिकेगा कि नहीं बिकेगा, लाइफ स्टॉक का एक कंफ्यूजन है. So there is a lot of uncertainty in that, and some of the distant marketing जो channels है उसमें भी एक level का uncertainties है. And there is obviously, one of the biggest, as I was telling, rain-fed cultivation is the biggest strength of our people, and rain-fed में inputs timely nahi hona is actually going to affect our kharif outputs. So these are some of the long-term challenges. Can you go to the next slide, please? So in this situation, what we were trying to do is we were holding massive awareness drives. So we could not do direct SHG meetings. So what we were doing is we were having this COVID Jagrukta Rath. So this Rath had a flex and all. There was local languages, jingles ke madhyam se we're trying to raise awareness. And then there was this, we were doing through Gram Pradhans, SHG leaders ke madhyam se we were trying to communicate to the community about rumors and is tarah ki, because one-to-one communication, there was a FAQ kind of a thing prepared. बीमारी क्यों होता है, इसके लक्षण क्या है, क्या लक्षण नहीं है, specific rumors को deal करना. So there was a awareness drive, mass awareness drive, as well as individual counseling, telephone calls to the opinion makers in the society so that they actually communicate to the larger community. The second important thing, and which is why it is so important that the SHG's role comes in play, is that what we did is we were collecting a large number of data on an alternate date basis, and we were feeding to the block control room and the Gram Panchayat control room. So there was a group of SHG women, Anganwadi Didi, and the Gram Pradhan ka ek surveillance team tha. And they were actually regularly collecting data like पिछले 24 घंटे में कितने लोगों को कोविड टाइप का सिम्टम दिखा, 24 घंटे में कितने लोग बाहर से आए हैं, उनमें से कितने लोग सिम्टमिक है, नहीं सिम्टमिक है, कितने लोग हंगर एक्सपीरियंस कर रहे हैं, कितने लोग का पास एंटाइटलमेंट्स मिला. So there was a big array of data that we were collecting, and Google Sheet में share कर दें. Google Sheet was actually shared with the block control room, the BDO, and the other functionaries as well, and that actually created a lot of timely response that we need, and it actually formed the foundation of our work. And also what we created, this block control room and the Gram Panchayat control room was formed, where every alternate day evening there is a meeting of the Panchayat leaders, the SHG leaders, the block administration का ये जो डेटा को लाके हमको कैसे रेस्पॉन्स क्रिएट करना है, कौन से ऐसे गांव है जहां पर लोग हंगर एक्सपीरियंस कर रहे हैं, कहां पर हमको कम्युनिटी किचन्स लगाने हैं, कहां पर हमको ड्राई राशन किट्स प्रोवाइड करने हैं. तो इस तरह का एक रेस्पॉन्स क्रिएट करने के लिए दिस सिस्टम वाज वेरी हेल्पफुल. सो इट अ डेटा बेस्ड every alternate days में बैठ के क्विक रेस्पॉन्स सिस्टम क्रिएट करना, that was only possible because of a strong institutional base that we had from SHG to BO to CLF and block level federations. So that's an important point. And we were also trying to, so we were collecting the SHG members जो data collect कर रहे थे door to door. We were also collecting like कितने pregnant women है, कितने लोग को अभी institutional delivery का जरूरत पड़ेगा. So उसके लिए ensure करना कि they don't face hassles, arrangements were also made. There was, as in many states, many places, this whole mask making as a big program came up. Also, we had a lot of grants. The SHG institutions themselves did a lot of crowdfunding. Pradhan also raised a lot of funds to make sure that the PPE kits are available, the protective gears are available to the functionaries. So in each block, I think we distributed and created kits of over 2.5 lakh rupees. We were also depending on the 14 Finance Commission's untied funds as well for running the mask making units. We were also, these SHG institutions were also connecting over phone to organizations like Ajivika Bureau and other such organizations, and trying to send money to their relatives in different other places like Surat, Pune, Bangalore, is tarah ka. So there was a team of people in the SHG institutions who were working on a regular basis, connecting to these different other organizations who could actually help them in medicines, food, shelter, movement, in some cases legally, seeking help from the labor department in the state. That was one important work that we were doing. The other thing is that we did is that in the data collection there was one important data that was being collected was कितने लोगों का produce ऐसे हैं जो बिक नहीं रहे because हमारे सारे markets were closed down. So the SHG institutions actually took special permission from the district agriculture officer. वो quantify किए कि कौन-कौन जगह से कितने materials उठने हैं, कितने भिंडी है, कितना टमाटर है, इस तरह का calculation करके the district actually issued orders so that the private traders on a particular date paper में निकलता था इस तरह का, and they actually ensured that the producers were still rates were अच्छा rates नहीं मिला था, but that was an important intervention that was being done. On a long term thing, as I said, the most important thing was that kharif outputs ko ensure karna, and critically what the SHG institution did compared to the other years is that three important intervention. One is that nutrition garden was taken, and in NREGS now we are like in Odisha has already an NREGS program on nutrition garden. We are doing that in a big scale now. Second is that इस साल बहुत सारे ऐसे परिवार हैं जैसे मैंने कहा कि उनका migrant income नहीं आया है, तो the SHG institutions identified such families, and input grants through Rangde, through some grant programs were made available, and others के लिए bank linkage, and mainly ensure the SHG institutions ensured that खाद बीज services timely मिले. Another long-term plan that we have made is that I'll quickly tell it now. I know that I'm overshooting time, but I'll come back on this later. Is that we have come to know that our COVID has made us realize that our social protection is really on a fragile ground. Large number of people are out of NFSA बोलिए, मातृत्व वंदना बोलिए, ये सब चीजें accessible नहीं हो रहे हैं. So what we have done is that we have created SHG cadres. There are 4 committees, as you all know, in the BOs. So one of the committees on social development, we call it Nyaya Evang Adhikar Samiti. The Nyaya Evang Adhikar Samiti has identified a woman called Samvidhan Sati. She is actually being trained now it's a civic literacy training program that they go through, and then they actually do screening of all the members in the SHGs. And then there is a Gram Panchayat help desk where the SHG members actually sit there, ensure that the center is basically for enrollment and grievance handling and facilitating some awareness about the schemes and ensure that they are timely enrolled. So the Samvidhan Sati is the Gram Panchayat help desk, and then we have something called a Nagrik Sahayata Kendra at the block level. This is largely in Jharkhand, and where in the block campus itself we have a SHG, the SHG Block SHG Federation as an outlet there, which actually deals with the issues that have not been dealt at the panchayat level. Quickly moving, I know I'm overshooting time. The other important thing that we came this time, and very importantly, it was asked that who are the who did we partner with? One of the big partnerships that we did was with Gram Panchayat, because center से district से पैसा कितना आएगा बहुत पता नहीं था. The SHGs had to act quickly. So the one of the institution that they could quickly hold on to was Panchayats, and Panchayats actually just after the lockdown, 23rd, 24th को ही they opened Panchayat Bhavans. They took off their table chair and all. The first in Jharkhand, the first quarantine homes were Panchayat में create किए गए थे. महिलाओं ने अपना खटिया लाया, बिस्तर लाए. Panchayat actually made sure that इस तरह का sanitizers and other things quarantine home में जो होना है वो सब they made it ensured, and it was taken from 14th commission funds. I'll detail that in my next stint. The other thing that we ensured, as I was telling, is NREGS में इतने लोग जो बाहर से आए, roughly 3,000 लोग बाहर से आए थे. So what we were trying to do is that, assuming that 50% of the people will be going back, others would need serious rehabilitation in the same farming system. So the NREGS activities, we made it more agriculture focused. For example, in Pradhan's areas are known in around 30 blocks, we are doing now 60,000 acres, around 6,800 acres of mango orchards are being done this, and the total target is a CM's program. It's called Birsa Harit Gram Yojana, which is targeting around 20,000 acres of mango orchards. So mango orchard is one example I gave. Similarly, the other thing that the SHG collectives are doing, they are creating a registry of all the migrants who have come. Yes. I'll quickly make 30 seconds, ma'am, and I'll finish it. The other important thing that has happened in the North Chotnagpur region is that the SHG women have come together. They already had an idea called Nari Adalat, where they used to do counseling and giving legal support. The SHG members are barefoot paralegal support givers, and in COVID times, they played a very significant role. I'll stop here and come back in the next thing. Thank you, and I'm sorry for overshooting the time.
No. Thank you. It's just that, we should get an opportunity to hear everyone once and then we take on. Thank you so much for your comments. And it's been this insight which the larger media does not cover, is that how within the rural and tribal areas, how quick responses were developed and what kind of partnerships emerged in that scenario. So now we move on to our second speaker, and we have Dr. Babita with us. Dr. Babita, to you, my question is, Dr. Babita, my question is to you. You come with a lot of experience in implementing programs. So we would like to hear from you that during this scenario, when there were different government departments coming up with their kind of solutions. So how did this kind of convergence help, or what were the challenges in developing the convergent model so that we could respond quickly? So we would, and not only your present experiences, your past experiences also you could share. Thank you, Dr. Babita, over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Anand. And at the outset, let me thank the organizer, Roshni Center, Women in Global Health, Lady Irwin College, and other organizations for giving me an opportunity to speak about this convergence model. And as such, NRLM is built upon a framework of convergence. So during this time, basically during this pandemic time, we could leverage from our base, that is, which is the women self-help groups and their network. They have been quite helpful. And and in Odisha, under our program, like under NRLM and other state government schemes, we are having more than 6 lakh women self-help groups, covering around 8 million rural households. So during this time, actually, when all of a sudden there was a kind of shutdown, lockdown, everything, the movement was restricted. At the time, this network has been quite helpful, and thanks to our state government also, who recognized the the potential of this self-help group women, that immediately after the first lockdown, actually the advisory came up immediately, or all the subsequent advisories also of the Health and Family Welfare Department, from the Disaster Management Department. Say they put a special space for our women self-help groups. Like the advisory as such says ki, immediately after the lockdown, the state government started running the community kitchen, and at all the Gram Panchayat level, to solve basically the most needy and vulnerable households in each panchayat. So they started community kitchen for the old, the infants, and for the children, and many such vulnerable households. So in that advisory itself, it was mentioned that all the SHG will run all the community kitchen. So that was very helpful, and actually that gives the credibility to the SHG network in the state. And other than that, also there's this temporary medical camps also. They were being managed by our women self-help groups and the federations at the panchayat level. And again, our community cadres in the state, actually we are having around more than 30,000 community cadres, like the field level functionaries. They are at different capacities, like at the very village level. If you go, that is our advantage. Actually, we have an outreach up to the last mile. So that is again an opportunity for our for the Odisha Livelihoods Mission, from which the state government has also leveraged that. Immediately the SHG network has been utilized for to address different issues that immediately came out because of this situation, which make almost a standstill situation has arisen because of this pandemic. And convergence, if you speak, we are as such, not only during this time, but as such we work with more than 10 departments, because we are implementing the livelihoods program. So basically agriculture, life, animal husbandry, and these other and even industries and other departments. We are having a good rapport, and we are running different programs in convergence with them. We have these cadres, we call them Krishi Mitra, the Prani Mitra, like the to support the agriculture and livestock activities at the very village level. They are also being utilized by the departments, like fishery department and others are also utilizing their services. So that they are basically from the community, and they have more acceptance at the community level. And if you want to reach to any household, so these cadres, they have been very helpful. And as such, our federations, they are also very very active federations and very vibrant federations we are having. So I will just give you certain examples how immediately they became very responsive, and whatever issues came up, immediately they were able to sort out all those issues. Like I will say, I'll take one example that immediately after the people came to know about COVID-19, after this awareness came, so the first challenge was that there was shortage of mask everywhere. There was an unavailability of masks, sanitizer, hand wash. So our SHG members, I remember initially in the month of March, what we found is that one SHG, like with the support of our district team in the district, one of the districts that is in Cuttack, two SHGs, they started stitching a mask, this 3-layer mask. And immediately you see over a period of 15 days, like almost 2,400 SHGs are now involved in making masks. And during this period, they stitched almost 60 lakh masks have been stitched by them. They supplied to everywhere. They supplied to the medical stores. They supplied to the district administration. They supplied to the local administration. They supplied in the temporary medical camps. They also donated something also. So these are the kind of that proactiveness that what you could see among the community also. They are very responsive as such. So if any issues is coming, so they are very proactively they are handling that situation. So this is one part, and the other part is that like Mr. Abraham was also mentioning about the return of this migrant workers. So Odisha received almost more than 8 lakh migrant households from who go to work mostly in Delhi, Mumbai, Surat, and other states, and Hyderabad. So we received more than 8 lakh households. So they have been kept in the temporary medical centers or in the isolation centers, and our SHG members, they were basically engaged in managing those or monitoring those centers. And basically it was a work of the health and ASHA workers at that time. All of us, we know that we must acknowledge their support during this difficult time. But with all these frontline functionaries, one of the member was our community cadres also. They were the members. So they formed a team, and because of the acceptance at the state level, they all over, like in all the villages and all the panchayats, wherever you go. So this is a one person who has been associated with the ASHA, INM and Anganwadi workers, and they were moving from door to door. Like they were not scared, even in this difficult situation also. They faced all the challenges because when everybody was afraid of coming out of, you can also heard many stories that people are dying and nobody, the neighbors, and nobody is going to see them. And at such difficult times also, these cadres have been they've been very available at every time. So we must thank all of them, and they are actually the COVID warriors. And other than that, also some other thing what actually have been immediately taken care of was that there was because of this lockdown, people where the restriction was, though there was a restriction on the movement. So our SHG members, they started delivering this essential items, including vegetables and other things, to the doorstep. And they started running some mobile vans also. So they have been with the support of the block administration in many places, and we have another unit called Ormas with OLM. So together, all of them, they started this making all these essential items available to the community, and that definitely was happened with the support of everybody, all the other departments and with the line departments. So this I think I would say that this is very important at that kind of a difficult situation, making yourself available for the community, and at the time of need, actually the SHG members are available for their peers at that time. livelihoods, if I talk about, because we are basically a livelihoods mission, and thanks to all the advisories immediately that come up after the, I think after the second lockdown or so, that they made all the livelihoods activities open at the field level, because this was the thing which was mostly affected, the livelihood of the people. It was basically affected because of all this restriction imposed upon during this kind of lockdown and shutdown. So during that time, actually, we to make the inputs available to the community, to start different kind of, because the Kharif was arriving at that time, so the people need lot of support at that time. So our people, they constantly and very closely they worked with all the departments, like agriculture departments at the district level. We also facilitate from the state level in convergence with, in coordination with our agriculture department, horticulture department, so that in order to see that the people are getting timely seeds and sapling supplies there to the community, which is very important, because if they lose one season, then it's gone. So that was very important, and you will be again happy to know, again Mr. Abraham was making a mention during his deliberation that about nutrition garden. As such, we are a pioneer in nutrition garden promotion. We are one of the SRLMs where we are taking up the nutrition garden at a large scale. For last 2-3 years, under different programs, we are running this, like the households are engaged in developing household nutrition garden. We are having a program with UNICEF, which is called Swabhiman. We are having another big program in convergence with APPI, the Jim Premji Philanthropic Institution. And one good thing happened is, during this COVID-19 period, our state cabinet has approved 5 lakh nutrition garden for 5 lakh households under MGNREGS, and that program is running in convergence with Odisha Livelihoods Mission. So in convergence, we are running this program. So definitely convergence is everywhere, and whatever program we are doing from the beginning, I said that NRLM SH is a program we can't run without convergence, without taking support from other departments. So we are complementing and supplementing each other. And these are certain things that has happened during this time. And if I go to the history, maybe I will take 2 minutes to speak something about our past experience of convergence. Under this Swabhiman program, which is basically health programs, health, nutrition, sanitation, when we address the entire FNSW agenda during in this program, we started working at the field level, basically to address the health and nutrition agenda of the households. And our role was basically to support the other departments, the other core departments like the Women and Child Development Department, ICDS, Health and Family Welfare, to make their services available to the community. So you can see very significant improvement we saw in many parameters. Actually, see this village health and health, nutrition and sanitation rate, the participation of pregnant women increased like very significantly, like which was 50%, 57% in 2016, that became 98% in 2019 based on the midline survey result. Similarly, if you see the consumption of IFA tablet, which was 72% in 2016 as the time of baseline, that increased to 83%. PDS coverage, it was increased from 70% to 99%. So see, these are the achievements what we have seen when we work in convergence, because all the services are there, but it was because of the maybe lack of awareness of the people, or maybe we were not building that kind of a system where we can directly reach to the people, and we develop a very good rapport with the community and the service providers. So these kind of, see, we were only doing the kind of facilitation kind of role what Odisha Livelihoods Mission under NRLM we were doing. But these are the result, very enriching result what you can see from this program. And one more development I would just definitely see, which has again happened in convergence, that we had approached to government for a because as I mentioned also that livelihood and enterprises have been very badly affected during this period, because there is a restriction on the input supply, there is a lack of fund, and there are some other issues were also there. So government has approved one very recently, like 4-5 days back, our honorable chief minister, he has approved a COVID assistance package for different 4 categories of people. So basically who are in need of fund, immediate fund to start their or reopen their enterprises which have somehow come to a close due to this pandemic situation. So that cap has been approved, under which from NRLM itself or from the available fund at our community institution level, some kind of fund will be made available to the, like, no, working capital support will be given to the rural community. So these are certain examples of convergence. So maybe for the time being this all, and maybe I will come back later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can understand. I mean, so much of work has gone, and we get very few such platforms across diverse partners, to share the efforts which have been made. And I know that all the departments have been working overtime to respond as per the guidelines which are issued from time to time. And convergence, as Babita ji just said, has been the key instrument of reaching out to people, because without convergence you can't, because on the ground people or the families are common households. So it is only the departments which function in silos otherwise, and we have to converge to provide those services. Thank you, Babita ji, for that insight. And now we move on to our next speaker, and we have the policy influencer at the top, Neeta Kejriwal ji. Neeta ji comes with, so we will have first, before we take Neeta ji, we will take Dr. Vani, so that, we can listen to Neeta ji's perspective from the global and the national perspective. So Dr. Vani Sethi, we all know that the work you have been doing is of promoting nutrition for women, and you have were the first one to experiment on using the power of women collectives to influence women's nutrition. So we would like to know from you that what is it that drew you towards this platform, and what has your experience been in the last 10 years?
Am I audible? Am I visible? All right. So what are colleagues, good evening, everyone. I'll keep my video off, and I will try to focus on the question that was asked. Now, friends, few things which I would like to flag here is that any family that is living in abject poverty faces multiple deprivations, and those multiple deprivations cannot be managed by nutrition promotion alone. And this was one of those hypotheses that failed miserably over a long period of time among the nutrition community, which did not function in a multi-sector fashion. The poorest of the poor require multi-sector response and a livelihood, and nutrition promotion is insufficient. However, livelihood programs, just focusing only on the livelihoods and not focusing on health nutrition risks, also face the risk where the gains that they receive in the livelihood programs are washed away in nutrition expenses, health expenses, and illness related to that. Hence, an amalgamation of nutrition awareness and promotion and livelihood in the poorest homes in a manner which they understand, we realize that would reap higher dividends. Now, look at the COVID situation, friends. A family which is living in abject poverty is stigmatized, requires health, social protection, requires services, and is also the least to receive any of these, even pre-COVID. What COVID does is it unmasked the system's capacity to provide its services to the poorest poor in the face of emergencies, but it also provided the opportunity to look at nutrition, health in a more holistic way and provide livelihoods management agencies to also layer nutrition into their programs. And this is something that we have been hypothesizing and working on since 2014 with NRLM and prior to that. Nutrition is a multi-sector problem, and it needs diets, it needs services, it needs practices. And livelihood missions have played a major role in this, pre-COVID, post-COVID. COVID has induced the crisis of income security and aggravated it. However, what we have realized is that the livelihood missions that have realized the need to layer health, nutrition, water, and sanitation promotion, and added a service cost to this in the vulnerability reduction fund, so that the poorest of the poor women who are attached to SHG groups are not volunteers in the activity, but already engaged in nutrition-based livelihood promotions, they were better prepared to also respond to the crisis. And hence, the linkage of nutrition and livelihoods and the pre-preparedness assumes significance. What we've also realized is significance is the amalgamation of verticals within NRLM. Never before have we seen compared to COVID, where different verticals within NRLMs and different verticals within departments were also coming together. Three things come forward. People need livelihoods, people need social protection and entitlements, people need the stigma to be addressed, and people need service access. A lot of the pre-work of a lot of agencies that have functioned with NRLM has been on engagement of women's self-help groups at the self-help group level on behavior promotion aspects using SHG platforms, networks, or weekly meetings. There are few initiatives where nutrition, health, water, sanitation, micro-planning exercise has been done, and grants are provided to federations and village organization networks to implement those integrated microplans. And I think COVID has now taught us that it's important to have nutrition, health, water, sanitation, microplans as an inherent part of the overall family level, VO level, and federation level microplanning process. This drawing, we realized way back in our scoping exercise when we were working with tribal communities, and COVID has only firmed my hypothesis even forward. What COVID has also done is that it has shown the system how the poorest of the poor can come forward to support their own and the system. Now the question is, how much is the system actually supporting the poorest of the poor and the women in these groups with the service cost, so that nutrition-based livelihoods are profitable? It's a business model.
Sorry, I can't hear anything.
Same, I think we have lost her. We'll just try to connect back with her.
Yeah, can't hear anything.
Yeah.
Can we move to the next question?
So should we move to the next speaker for the time being, and we will wait for Dr. Vani to complete her conversation in the second round.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So we can move to Neetaji now. Neetaji, as I said in the beginning, holds more than 2.5 decades experience in the social sector and has been with this entire process of mobilizing self-help groups under National Rural Livelihood Mission. Her journey has been long and so are the learnings. So listening to all our panelists so far, we have understood that self-help groups have stood with strength in the past 9 years, and there is a huge hope we have built around their actions. So we would like to hear from ma'am Neeta Kejriwal, that what experiences she has, and in terms of, as we heard, the state and the community perspective, that how responsive are we need to be now to the emerging needs of these women collectives. Neetaji, please.
Thank you, Dr. Anand, and I'd like to thank the organizers, WGH India and Roshni Center, and Lady Urban College and other partners for organizing this dialogue. So, I mean, it's really been interesting to listen to the different speakers. And being the last speaker means that, most of the things have already been said. Particularly if you have Dr. Babita Mahapatra also, who has been part of this NRLM journey right from the beginning almost. So as we've heard, the self-help groups have now, and their organizations, the federations at the village level and cluster level. Now we have in the entire country more than 64 lakh self-help groups covering more than 7 crore members. So the reach, first of all, is tremendous. Almost every state, every UT. We sort of understand that to reach saturation, we would have to cover maybe around 10 crore rural poor households under this network. So we have almost reached 70% of our target. So the first thing here is the immense reach of the program. And the second thing is the quality of the institutions that we have been able to create. I would not say that we have done our work and we have perfect institutions, but if we compare to what was happening before NRLM came in, we really have a very good quality institutions, and the fact that they have been able to respond very, very promptly and without really even the state missions or the central mission prompting them. They have been able to respond to the COVID situation, and you've heard so many examples of all the activities that they did, and I'll tell you more about this also. That itself shows that they have really grown up as organizations, and the culture that we have tried to build under NRLM of self-help, right from the beginning, the program ensured that we try to bring in professionals. Before this, I don't think the rural development programs were supported so professionally. So this was one very important thing that NRLM did, to bring in the professional support. And then even before the staff of the state rural livelihood missions actually went down to work, we made sure that they are very properly trained, and the very basic concepts of NRLM are ingrained into these people. And the basic concepts were that the mission and the mission staff are not there to direct or lead the rural households, but to support and facilitate them. So NRLM right from the beginning has really believed in the innate wisdom. If you see our first documents, our framework for implementation, our mission document, etc., the first things we say that we believe in the innate wisdom and capacity of the poor households, and that they know what is good for them. What they need is support, facilitation, and maybe access to certain resources. So this is what we try to ingrain in all the people who work for the program. And Dr. Anand, in my conversations with you also, you were mentioning how you have seen this kind of sensitivity in the staff of the SRLMs when they interact with the community. The other things that we did was to learn from some of the states that had done even before NRLM came into existence. There's a lot of work in terms of building the collectives of women going on in a few states, and we tried to learn from their good work and also from the challenges and shortcomings that they were facing. So these states were allowed to become the national resource organizations and provide support to the new states to take this program forward. But the biggest thing I think that NRLM did on a massive scale, there were examples of community resource persons, etc., working, but NRLM has managed to take this on scale and very systematically and in a very structured manner, so that the community itself is taking this program forward. So in a true sense, we tried to make this a program for the women, by the women, and of the women. So these community resource persons were taken from amongst the SHG members themselves. They were given training, and the kind of amazing work they have done, it's really a treat to interact with them and see the kind of wisdom that they bring in, the way they address issues. And this was considered to be the best and the most effective strategy to take this program forward. Because it was economical, two, it was empowering the women themselves, and in the process they were making some livelihood also for them, and three, they were the best people to communicate with the other women of their own kind. Their own experiences would really help in helping them make a connection with the other rural women. And in fact, they became in a way the trainers also for the SRLM staff, for them to understand the issues properly and to be able to take the program forward. And now we have in the entire country more than 2 lakh community resource persons working. And the best thing is that they're working in every vertical of NRLM. So we have, in the beginning, we started off with community resource persons who were supporting institution building, social mobilization, etc. But subsequently, we have the community resource working as Pashu Sakhis, as Krishi Sakhis. We have Poshan Sakhis. We have the bank Sakhis. We have the banking correspondent agents. So every aspect of the, even Bima Mitras, etc. So every aspect, every vertical of the program is working through the community resource persons, and this makes sure that the entire knowledge also resides with the community itself, and they are there for 24/7 kind of support. So and then the other things that NRLM tried to bring in to ensure quality, to ensure that the institutions that were created were very strong and healthy and self-reliant, was to go in a phased manner, to go slowly and to give sufficient flexibility to the states to do their job. So we were aware that the states are at different levels in implementation of these kind of programs. So we made sure that we never had very strict guidelines coming from the top. The states were given sufficient flexibility to plan their own activities, to understand their context, their situation, and then accordingly respond to that. And in this manner, actually, because of this flexibility and because of the professionals brought in, NRLM has really been able to respond to the needs emerging from the ground. So even for every activity that we have taken up, if it is FNHW or it is a gender related activity also, we have tried to work on, and basically in two manner. One is that from the central level, we try to give a generic kind of guideline or generic kind of module or generic kind of advisory to all the states. But then the states are always asked to ensure that they customize everything to their own requirements. So this again has provided a lot of flexibility and a lot of opportunity to for NRLM to respond to the emerging situations. So in all these manners, and now what we are trying to do, we have realized that we have very good institutions at the ground, the self-help groups, etc. And we have also realized from evidence and from some of the studies that have been done that the federations have been playing a very important role. So wherever there are federations available and wherever there are strong federations available, the movement has been better, the institutions have performed better. So now our focus is on building these strong federations. So we're working a lot with the village organizations, and we are working now actually to create in almost at least one in every district in the country, or maybe more than one also in every district of the country, what we call the model cluster level federations. And the expectation is that these model cluster level federations would be kind of would be very strong bodies where the governance systems are very strong, their financial systems are very strong, their HR systems are very strong, and that all the activities that we want to layer, which we are in any way working on, like food, nutrition, health, and water sanitation, etc., gender, livelihood, so that the model CLFs are strengthened so much that they are able to give oversight and monitor and support their own village organizations and SAGs, etc., in all these activities in future. So this is the direction in which we are trying to now move to strengthen. And as my colleague Babita and then Vani also was saying, NRLM has been working a lot on FNHW, gender, etc. And as Vani very correctly pointed out that, if we do all these activities related to livelihoods, institution building, but we do not hand in hand work on these kind of social development related issues, we simply wash away all our efforts. So both complement each other. I mean, we can't be doing just social development without livelihood, and we can't be doing just livelihoods because these things all together is what give some quality to the life of the poor. And we realize this because, as somebody pointed out, we have been taking these Nutri Garden initiatives in a big way. So initially we started off this intervention as kitchen gardens under our Mahila Kisan Sashaktikarana Pariyojana projects. And then we realized that, if simply having these kitchen gardens also does not ensure that the nutrition level of the household will improve. This was one of our expectations, actually, that once there is a backyard garden and there are vegetables and fruits growing, people would consume them. But then we realized that you need to actually go and clearly tell people, and particularly women, that there is a need to consume, and you have to make them understand why there is a need to consume, what are the different kinds of nutrients that the body requires, and the ultimate outcome that it leads to a better health, which again leads to less cash outflow in terms of meeting health emergencies. So similarly in other aspects, like we are working largely with women and women institutions, but then we realize that simply working with women or simply doing some social mobilization or institution building also does not ensure complete empowerment, or does not ensure that women can move out of in issues like domestic violence or the kind of social discrimination, etc. they face. So you actually have to work on gender sensitization. And in this context, we have also been trying to now work and the one thing that we are trying to do is to make sure that all the staff under NRLM, all the community institutions under NRLM are sensitized on issues related to nutrition, health, etc., as well as on gender. And then we are trying to work in specific states also for a specific kind of to be able to develop the state-specific context. So with all this kind of effort that has gone in, and I must congratulate our SRLMs also in the wonderful work they have been doing. With all this, we have seen the kind of response that immediately we could get from the SAG network. And as Babita was mentioning, at the national level within this COVID period, we found that every state, in every state, the SAGs have actually taken up this work of making the masks, the sanitizers, the hand washes, etc. In fact, more than 23 crore masks have been produced by SAG members during this period, and more than 8 lakh liters of sanitizers, etc. And in most states, as Babita again mentioned, the women have got into producer groups, and they have been trying to take fruits and vegetables to different places. And the remarkable and amazing way in which they have supported the poor and the vulnerable. More than 12,000 community kitchens have been run in various states, and a large number of vulnerable people identified and provided food, I mean dry ration or cooked food, etc. during this period. Also, these community institutions we could use in a very good way by to take the information about COVID itself, the risks associated, the symptoms, how do you handle it, how do you manage the quarantine centers. For this, we could do massive trainings. We did online training, and we actually trained more than 20,000 resource persons from all the states. In this, we got a lot of support from BMGF and from NIRD. So this whole the modules were quickly developed, and quickly these trainings were undertaken. And then because we have these networks there, and we have the community resource persons, so the trainers that we trained were able to then in turn train the community resource persons and some frontline workers. And they in turn, even in the COVID time, through telephone or through some face-to-face interaction, they were able to train, and they have been able to take this message about COVID to more than 5 lakh SAG members and other rural households. So that is one advantage of having these strong institutions in place. Going forward, we are trying to work, and we also issued many advisories, because we realized that this is a time when initially, of course, as soon as this COVID struck and the lockdowns happened, we issued advisories saying that the meeting should stop. But 3 months down the line, when the lockdowns were partially opening up, and we also realized that the work needs to start, we have issued advisories how the work should be started, and in what manner all the preventive measures should be taken even while doing this. The ministry made sure that under MG Narega, the works should be started immediately everywhere. And you must have read lots of reports where a lot of work has been done, and a lot of mandates have been created under MG Narega. In fact, this year it has been unprecedented in terms of the jobs done and the mandates created. The ministry also made sure that all the funds are immediately released to all the states in the month of April itself, under all different programs of government, so that there is no shortage of funds. We also issued advisories saying that there should be some moratorium given to repayment of loans. But eventually, it has to start being repaid also, because there is a requirement of funds. We also issued advisories to the state saying that all the funds that have to be released to the institutions in terms of CIF, RF, revolving fund, community investment fund, should immediately be released, so that there is sufficient liquidity available, which is very important in these crisis times. And one more important thing that happened was that we have these banking correspondent agents. These are again SAG members who have been trained, and they are providing these banking services on the doorsteps. And these banking correspondent agents have also played a very important role. As per the figures available to us, about more than 6,400 banking correspondent Sakhis, as we call them, have done almost 67.5 lakh transactions during this period, and have disbursed more than 14.7 crore, 1,407 crore rupees during this period. And they have really gone to difficult areas and have undertaken this work. So this has been also a great help to many parts of the rural community. So this is the kind of movement that has been built in the country. This is the kind of response that these community institutions have been able to give in these difficult times. And the fact that many of the social sector programs actually want to work with NRLM to deliver their services and their messages through the institutions of NRLM, that itself sort of gives credibility to the good quality institutions that have been created and the great work that these institutions are capable of doing. So I think I'll end here, and I think almost covered the entire.
Yeah. Thank you, Neetaji. I think it has been a great experience for all our listeners, specifically the student community. I mean, to understand the points of how the nation has tried, and through your words, we have understood, how different guidelines also, thinking from the top has gone down to make a difference. Now, since we've lost Dr. Vani in between her audio, so request Dr. Vani to please come back and share. And after that, once then in closing, we can have one remark or a recommendation from all our speakers. But please first let's listen to Dr. Vani Sethi. Dr. Vani Sethi, over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Sarita. I'll go on to the second question which you had posed to me. And am I audible?
Yes.
Posed with is that, in our experience of feeding research into implementation and learning, and how that has helped in COVID times, what are the learnings for us to share with the broader community? So friends and colleagues, we have been trying to work on ground to develop the programmatic know-how and test the added value of engaging VOs and CLS for integrated adolescent and maternal nutrition programs. And what we have learned so far is that having academic institutions and systems set in place as learning and relearning sites have supported us in that journey, and also helped us to respond in times of COVID. How? Because those systems were there as repositories of knowledge and job aids. They were there to scale up the processes that seemed to work. It also showed us that learning as a basic in design, wherein the community collectives are a part of the process of design, and several consultations are used with grassroots stakeholders. It helps contextualize the interventions. Even pre-COVID times, friends and colleagues, Nutri-based livelihoods we were trying. It's not all that rosy, as a word of caution. Till a service cost is not attached and a community worker, kitchen garden worker is not paid, people don't eat that vegetable, and a standardized SOP of how much land, what vegetables in what season, and a support of seeds is not provided, things don't really work. And in Odisha, Chhattisgarh, some parts of Bihar, we saw that those systems had been put in place. So what I go back in our learnings, now the COVID has induced a crisis, and we're moving back to getting our lives back on track. Where the gains that we made, we have actually lost some of those gains in our processes, where and basics is being now done. And what we have realized in this process, friends, is that maybe it's just the basics that was needed first, because there are several things that one can do. There are several things that someone must do. And I think that has come in the forefront in COVID times. And friends and colleagues, we have just finished an online concurrent monitoring system. And we set that up together with Dr. Sarita and her unit, where we've tried to see what are the things that are working, what are the things that are not working, what are the things that have stopped in times of COVID. And what it showed us is that women's self-help groups and their federations are reaching out to women and children who are at nutrition risks and linking them to poultry, linking them to social protection schemes, still providing loans, making those door-to-door visits. We also learned that face-to-face monitoring can be substituted by online monitoring. So the point I'm trying to make here is that while in a normal scenario, these important aspects get backsided while we are focusing on behavior promotion, COVID has taught us that these are most important. And it has also taught us that for the process to move slow. One hypothesis that we all are making is that SHGs can do it all. But NRLM Friends has a very strong backing of institutional building and capacity building vertical, which is doing its job on a continuous basis. And because it's doing its job on a continuous basis, you can layer anything else into the program. But if that important vertical does not do its job well, or the SHGs are not mature, you can't layer anything into that program. And so that's something which we need to keep at the back of our mind, is that the self-help groups at tier 2 and 3, which is BOs and SHG at CLF level, it's only when they are mature and they're managing grants from the government can they be actually engaged in integrated behavior promotion and service delivery as direct grantees. But they need to be capacitated, they need to be supervised, and they also need to be safeguarded against exploitation and violence. It has also shown us that NRLM works best when it provides a gap fill to the line departments rather than replacing its role, which oftentimes I've seen self-help group members playing that role, because in certain places where the service delivery itself is very fragile, and that's where NRLM and its federation network of SHGs work, they often take that role itself. But that's always on a voluntary basis. To the poorest of the poor, it needs a piece of bread and a roti. It cannot continue and sustain on a voluntary
Dr. Vani Sethi.
safeguarding the CRPs and their federation network to not replace frontline workers, but be aids to the frontline workers to complement them. I end here. I would be happy to take any further questions, and I'm happy to be a part of this panel. And each member in the panel has helped me personally in my journey, whether it is the Binju or Babita or Neeta ma'am. And together, we have been able to develop frameworks of action with SHG. I still feel that, friends and colleagues, the platforms of CLF and UP remain untapped for larger integrated food, nutrition, health, water, sanitation, promotion, and a lot of focus lies onto just the Poshan Sakhis or the CRPs. And hence it's a word of caution for all of us not to make them the next ASHA and another honorary worker, because communities and collectives, they have come together for a purpose, and that's livelihood generation and Rodanshe for their communities. They can't be given targets and they can't be made workers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Vani. I think that has been a very important point made by you, and we know that this is something so important. We know that whatever our learnings from the past have been, we cannot consider our women self-help group members to serve and do not attach any kind of acknowledgement or incentives to their work. So if the panelists permit me, there are just one or two questions, maybe in the interest of time we can take up. The questions, I think the first we would like to take up questions which were raised by our panelists the other day on the 18th. So any of you could choose to answer. The first question was in terms of their needs for digital literacy and information communication technology support system. Since we have talked about, training online and doing this kind of a survey for monitoring and supervision, we realize that there are certain challenges. So if there is any thought on that and how it could be done, if there are any suggestions or recommendations, I think that will be really helpful.
We have tried something like that. Would you like us to answer, or is there somebody else who would like to answer?
No, you please go on, then we will invite Neeta ma'am also.
All right, friends, we have been working with health, WCD department. Health is the nodal also for COVID-19 to develop various online modules on healthy eating, etc. And we have realized 3-4 things. That simple WhatsApp-based low-bit communication, which can be used on simple mobiles, which only use keyboards, work. We may assume that Android and Samsung phones are available with us, but the types of phones that are available down below need to be kept in mind. The second is you would have all seen children having online classes these days. And at UNICEF, we've been developing several healthy eating diets messages, which we've also given to Roshni and NRLM. But we have realized that the attention span is less, the connectivity falls. My connectivity fell, colleagues, while I was talking to you, and now I'm connected on the phone. But if I have a 4G, fine. If I didn't, you would have lost me. And also the skills and the capacity to use IT platforms, we've not tapped them enough. But this has given us a way to tap. For example, everything has its positives and negatives, but what are the things that you can do on an ICT platform? One must do and should continue doing that. I say monitoring. Talking to people up to block level can be done. Monitoring can be done. Trainings up to block level can be done. Down below, if you cannot do that, how panchayats initially, I have worked in Gujarat as my first posting, and we used to use two-way SATCOM communications even at that time. At that time, our Honorable Prime Minister was the Chief Minister, and we used to have SATCOM related trainings even that time. How can we do that at a cluster federation level office for our trainings? Grievance addressal can definitely be done. And how these channels like Women in Global Health can actually be used as by collectives and feed it back to the NRLM system. So you need a good abled support system to do it, and you need a good academic institution linkage down to the state level to provide you that support. Trainings are not all that easy. Message dissemination and monitoring is possible.
Thank you, Dr. Vani. I think that comes from experience, and from Roshni's experience also, we can say that up to the block level, it functions very well. But down that, there are challenges, and again, our cadres come into play. We have been trying to reach them on phone, but with the help of our cadres. So, we cannot lose sight of that. And in the last dialogue, they said that if this kind of infrastructure could be built at the CLF level, for example, they have a table and a chair, dari and almari. But if there could be something a little more on this kind, these women are really wanting, there is a wish to learn. And maybe, when I ask Babita first and then Neeta ma'am, that what are their challenges in terms of implementation or the lessons if it has been experimented on. Very quickly, ma'am. First Babita and then Neeta ma'am.
sorry, yeah. Definitely, actually, I go by what you were saying, Dr. Anand, and what Bani has also said, that this ICT actually become very helpful during this kind of a time when we are maintaining social distancing and all, but it again cannot reach everybody. But I again find that which runs in an ordinary phone like WhatsApp or maybe or some other like audio even, that we have to develop such kind of method which could reach everybody. And again, we can't go beyond the cadre. That also, that kind of a limitation also we see, that up to the cadre level it is fine, even one level below the block level, where at the panchayat maybe wherever cadres are having, so maybe many of them, like no, nowadays they are having a kind of smartphone, Android phone. But again, reaching to the SCG women is a, like, the last mile is again a challenge for us. So we could think about some alternate methods like methodology. So in the morning also we have a discussion, Nita ma'am was there also, that we were discussing maybe some small tools, like there's a Pico projector kind of thing, where we are training the community to run that, because we have also similar programs under NRLM at many places. So for a small group of women like 15 or 20, so this is very quite helpful. So that we have developed different modules also, or under many programs there are audio visuals are available. So if you could run that, that will be again very helpful. And other than that, also under NRLM, we have so many, we have created so many cadres at different, like trainers at different level. So, and we are utilizing the services, like Nita ma'am is aware that during this period, like we just trained all the SHA women, like, some lakhs of SHA women were trained on the COVID-19 management using this ICT technology only, and that could not have been possible without these trainers. So it was not only the ICT, because up to one level we conducted, up to the cadre level we conducted through this digital mode, and beyond that actually, again in our state also there is an advisory key, you cannot just stop all the activities, taking some 10 persons and maintaining social distancing, you could start training. So we followed all kind of precautions, because we have to live now in such a situation that we can't stop everything. So maybe small gatherings are allowed now. People are now much sensitive, because they also understand what kind of precautions have to be taken. So only ICT is not the solution. We could also sensitize the people where they take their own precautions, and in a small group using some kind of basically visuals, we could also provide them sensitization and training.
Thank you, Babita ji. So I think the perspective of actually having done, so we have the practice now, maybe it can convert into a policy, and I would invite Anita ma'am to tell her, from at the national level, what is now the plan, seeing that future we will need these.
So thank you, Dr. Anand. So basically, it's exactly like Babita said. We have to have a mixed kind of a policy. There is only so much you can do through the digital platform, given the connectivity issues, given the fact that all our women or even our cadres may not be having the Android phones also. So one way is definitely through the Pico projectors. These are, very simple projectors in which you can simply project even on a wall, and whatever. I mean, you can have small videos, training videos, and they can be 10 or 15 people can be collected, and the training can be done through that. Besides that, it's not only the training part, but in terms of digital literacy, we are having a lot of activities, particularly related to financial inclusion, financial transactions, etc. So we are trying to bring as many of our institutions, women's institutions, under the digital platform for financial transactions. And as I said, we have these banking correspondent agents and banking correspondent sakhis. And we intend to take this initiative to a big scale. We are hoping that almost every Gram Panchayat should be having at least one banking correspondent agent, so that all the transactions that happen for the community institutions, for the women, happen on the digital platform itself. So this kind of thing. And actually in the past we have had women working on tablets, etc. So we have this experience, and we know that they are able to understand and work on these devices pretty well. Under the model CLFs, again, we are definitely going to introduce all kinds of digital literacy. We are trying to provide some support, financial support also to these model CLFs so that they are able to have their desktops or laptops and can have their Wi-Fi connections. And normally they would be more or less at a block level, etc. So they at least starting with the cluster level federation, we will try to ensure that we go digital. And also at least in we, as I said, we are working on maybe about 1,000 model CLFs, but in at least 100 or 200 of them, we are also trying to ensure that their transactions immediately go on the digital platform, the financial transactions. Even for, we are coming up with a transaction-based MIS in which all the activities that happen within the institutions, the SAGs, the village organizations, CLFs, the financial transactions, as well as the recording of their minutes and other documentation, everything happens on the digital platform itself. So these are the different kinds of activities that we are planning to have to ensure digital, we go forward in a digital manner.
So thank you. It's heartening to know that there is already thinking in terms of bringing it down till the CLF level, till block level it exists. It will definitely need resources, we know, and that is why, once we are very clear in terms of our action plans, I think resources can be generated. The other thing, Neetaji, a small question, but I think for our women members, it is very important. They kind of shared that they are feeling threatened that with the repayment not being able to repay their loans. So their vulnerabilities, whether in terms of nutrition and education of their children and other things, they are not able to repay their loans, and therefore if they can, they may fall back to money lenders. So if you have any word of support, caution, or saying that what is the thinking, I think we will be able to send that message across to all.
Yes, I heard because I was listening to the women in the dialogue on the 18th also, and I heard this concern. So, so to begin with, we had asked for a moratorium on loan repayment. So that was allowed anyway. So it was for 3 months. We extended for another for 6 months or so. Besides that, we also said that if they want, their loans or their repayments can be restructured so that the repayments are not very difficult for them. Because eventually we don't want to write off everything, because this will set off a bad precedent, and the institutions also need their finances. Yeah. So, and of course, we are trying, so basically these are the different ways in which we are trying to help them. And definitely we'll send out, I think after hearing this and the fact that even women are not going to the SAG meetings for fear of this, we will definitely send more advisories to the state to make sure that these kind of things. Usually, there is a lot of sensitivity amongst the members of the groups themselves, and they are on their own also, they are mostly prepared to restructure loans. And we have also made provision, for the VRF, the Vulnerability Reduction Fund. So in cases of needs for very poor households and all, at least this can also be done. And of course, we are now trying in our best to support in terms of livelihoods. So collectivize the women and bring them into producer groups, etc. So that, so in some way, the livelihood activities need to restart. And that is where I think all the states are focusing very strongly. So, so definitely we'll be sending out some advisories to the state to say that, in this kind of situation, there should be a lenient view. And also, we have said that wherever RF and CIF have not been given to the institutions, so please give it to them. And in certain cases, if the state feels if they want to give some additional funds also, they will be able to do that. So I'm sure we'll tide over the situation.
Thank you. I think it has been really reassuring for us, and to say that, this dialogue has been meaningful for them, and it has their viewpoints, their challenges have been heard. So looking at the time now, because we are really running behind the schedule and we have to close now. So in summing up, maybe we can say the kind of solutions, Pico projectors and a little bit of digital literacy and provision of computers, plus recognition of our women cadres is something very important. So thank you all for being here. And now I request Deepika to take over. Deepika.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anand, and thank you so much to all the panelists. Really, it has been really very insightful and enriching discussion. We wish we had more time. I mean, it's not easy to get all of you together at the same time and have such an interesting discussion. But we would like to take the points that have been raised in this session forward, maybe in terms of some actionable agenda, and we can take it forward, offline, maybe for some collaborative work. So thank you so much once again for giving your precious time and coming and joining us for this session. And yeah, with this, I would like to close the session. For the participants, they can put in their comments and thoughts through the feedback form that has already been circulated in the chat box. And for any queries or doubts, you can you already have the email addresses and social media channels on the screen, so you can follow us for any updates. And WGH India Dialogue Series will continue bringing in more cadres of frontline health workers, bringing in their concerns and amplifying their contributions. So keep an eye out on our social media channels for future announcements. Thank you so much once again, and have a nice evening.
Thank you from our side also.
Yeah, thank you, panelists. I think we can stay for a little while, if that is possible.
Dr. Anand, yeah, we can stay maybe for a minute. The session might just automatically end at 4:55.
All right. So thank you, Binju. Thank you, Vani. Thank you, Babita. Thank you, Neeta ma'am. It has been really enriching, and I know, we really wanted to hear you more, but it's just the time. So Sumegha is also here with us, and she has been telling us, management becomes the problem when we have people who have so much to say. So Sumegha, last word from you.
No, this session went great, and thank you all for joining. It's been a pleasure to work with you all and having your thoughts on board. And Bani's been joining us for the second time. Thanks for your continuous support, and we look forward to working more with the NRLM and the women collectives who are largely not seen as the part of the health systems and health systems. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Finally, it's over.
Yeah, I joined in a bit late. Thank you everyone for joining.
Yeah.
So I hope we were able to cover the ground. I mean, it was really.
Just gonna get off. We'll get over a call and probably connect.
Yes. Yeah.